The Pelicans need to make these changes if they want to get back in their series with the Thunder. A different role for CJ McCollum, but not in the way that you think. A new defensive scheme as well, and maybe to actually be prepared for the referees. It's a playoff episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all on this Friday, getting you set for the weekend. There will also be a bonus show tomorrow, a crossover episode of Locked On Pelicans with Rylan Stiles of Locked On Thunder. But we got game 3 coming up midday on Saturday. We're going to talk about some changes the Pelicans have to make if they want to get back into this series. And we will start with CJ McCollum in a moment here. But of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. The #1 Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday. Let me know in the comments down below if you're an everydayer and what changes you want to see the Pelicans make. Do you agree with me about CJ McCollum? Do you agree with me about the defense here too? And your thoughts on the referees and the officiating as well. And by the way, for your second listen, go check out Locked On Saints. Who did the Saints draft? I'm recording this before the draft. I'm going to be listening to make sense of it, even if it's an unsexy pick like an offensive tackle. Ross Jackson going to be making sense of everything black and gold. So I want to say this to start, and this is kind of brutal. CJ McCollum has been real bad this series. There's just no getting around it. CJ McCollum has been bad. He has not made his shots on offense, and he has been as bad as you could possibly be on defense. The Thunder are actively searching for him, hunting him to try and get Shai Gilgeous-Alexander matched up against him, and it is working. It is working in this series so far. It'd be one thing if CJ was making his shots, but he's shooting 42% from the field, just 21.4% from three, averaging 17.5 points on 18 shot attempts is bad. And that's with 3.5 turnovers and just 5 assists through 2 games. That's the average right there. It's not good. He needs to be better. So they need to use him a little bit differently, but not in the way that you think. So on offense, the Pelicans' problem, one, is lack of just making shots, and we'll have answers to that in a second here. But the other big issue, and this will tie into what I want to look at with Brandon Ingram and the defense on the Pelican side and the Thunder side in the next segment, there's a lack of creation on offense. Would a point guard solve it? Maybe, maybe not. There's just no one there who can draw a double team right now for the Pelicans. And look, there's no answer to that lack of creation on the bench either. Not even Jose, who isn't having the best series either. And honestly, that probably means you need to roll with CJ McCollum in the starting lineup for the foreseeable future. It's a lack of creation. One of the things CJ can do is, create a little bit. There were times when he created 8 straight points for the Pelicans in game 2. He can be aggressive and drive to the basket. There really isn't anyone on the bench that can do that. You could get a little bit more defensive, and we'll look at that in the next segment with Dyson Daniels, with Najee Marshall, but there's not that kind of reliable creation of offense there. So you probably need to leave him in there. But here's the thing with that. It doesn't mean you have to give him a long leash with it. His defense has been so bad that he's just a huge liability out there. And if you're not hitting shots, then it's time to try somebody else. That's when you need to look at someone like Jordan Hawkins. So the Pelicans lack creation, an individual creator to go out and create open shots for others. Then do something off ball. You can have off ball creation, off ball actions. Run Jordan Hawkins through screens, and we'll talk more about screens in the next segment because, boy, haven't been good for New Orleans either. And in the third segment when we talk about the refs too. You can run Jordan Hawkins through multiple screens just to get him open and then have CJ make one pass or Brandon Ingram make one pass and get him the ball, and it's an open 3-point look. He can do that. Trey Murphy can do that. You don't have other guys that can really do that. So if CJ's not going to hit shots and is just going to be a complete liability on the defensive side of the ball, and the Thunder are thrilled being able to hunt him. They love this. The Pelicans are playing right into the hands of the Oklahoma City Thunder defense. Again, more on that in the next segment. You have to have other guys. You got to at least try other guys, right? And that's, to me, Jordan Hawkins. The problem to me is not only the defense. The defense isn't great, but there's ways to fix that without necessarily making you worse or needing to put in defensive specialists. You need more offense. If they even had just held the Thunder to 100 points in game one, they would have still lost. The Pelicans haven't cracked 100 points in any part of this series in the first two games. At a certain point, you just need to score and see if you can keep up with this Thunder team. Try Jordan Hawkins. Is it a little bit risky putting him in when he would be cold, when he hasn't played much? Yeah, they haven't used him or developed him in a way that you would have liked this season for him to be ready to go in this sort of environment. But you're starting to run out of answers, and I've already recorded the show with Rylan Stiles of Locked On Thunder. I'm a little more pessimistic going into Game 3 than I normally would be. Unless they make some of these type of changes, and maybe they can get some offense, some sort of creation. Maybe it just needs to be off ball. Maybe it just needs to be guys that are willing to shoot, that aren't kind of scared. And even if they have a bad shooting game, they're going to keep shooting because that's important. The Pelicans aren't taking the threes they need to make it. Now, it's not easy for them to even get open looks right now because of the way that this team is defending Brandon Ingram and his lack of aggression, with CJ McCollum and his lack of shot making and those sorts of things. But you've got to find something. And if CJ's not going to knock down shots for you, isn't going to play defense, it's not like Hawkins is going to play worse defense right now, right? Shai Gilgeous-Alexander didn't get stopped by CJ once in game 2. CJ's defense in this series has been about as bad as possible. I really don't know if it could get worse. And if it gets worse, who cares? You just lost by 30, 20, right? Like, it doesn't matter. That, when you're at rock bottom, there's no more down to go. And that's where defensively the Pelicans are in this moment, and offensively. So try something. If it gets worse and you lose by 30 again, who cares? It's still a loss. Try something, because what you've been doing through these first two games, particularly on the defensive side, particularly on offense too, isn't working. And that might mean it's time for Jordan Hawkins, Matt Ryan, anything. But I think it has to be with the offense and guys that can go and try and score, because that's what you've got to do. You've got to outscore your opponent to win many games. And look, if you're held to 92 points in back-to-back games, that's not how you're going to do it. You got to hold them then to 90. That's easier said than done, especially against the third, fourth best offense in the league. So I think it's a different role for CJ in two ways. He needs to be more aggressive and actually drive to the basket. Needs to. Off the jump, needs to do that in this game, in game 3. But if that's not working, if that's not happening, if the shot's not falling, you've got to have a quicker leash and just try Jordan Hawkins, because if CJ's not giving you the offense, it doesn't work in this game. Put someone else in who can maybe then do it. If they don't work, go back to CJ. It's fine. You've lost nothing there. But that's a change the Pelicans have to make going into game 3. They also need to make some changes on offense with the way they attack the Oklahoma City Thunder defense with Brandon Ingram, and what they're doing defensively. So it's an all defensive segment here coming up. We're going to look at both sides of it for the Thunder, for the Pelicans, coming up in the next segment here with some two changes on both sides of the ball they need to do. That's coming up next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. There's the 2024 Nissan Rogue, which is perfect for city drives and great escapes. And with class-exclusive Google built-in, it's your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. So you don't need to plug your phone in anymore. You've got Google Assistant, Google Maps, Google Play Store, all built right into the 12.3-inch, that's huge, HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. There's also the 2024 Nissan Pathfinder, which has room for up to 8, an expansive cargo capacity, and advanced available 4x4 capability. With 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds towing when adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer. So take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or the Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is also brought to us by our sponsor, BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off of our chests. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you, and it's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased in your life. So today, I want to say how I really feel about something, and you might even be thinking about the same thing this week. That's the refereeing here. I actually think this is more on the Pelicans than the refs. We'll talk about that in the third segment because this team is woefully unprepared for what's happening in this series, whether that's coaching, whether that's the players. It's really bothering me. There's no reason to be unprepared going into a playoff series, and the Pelicans need to figure that out, and we're going to talk about that more in this show. So therapy can be different for everyone. I feel better already. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports teams, and it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this team. The adjustments the team needs to make. Guests like Antonio Daniels or Rylan Stiles giving you insight you can't get anywhere else, right? We're going to shoot you straight when we talk about the refs too. There's a lot of insight there that you won't be able to get anywhere else because people just want to complain about the refs rather than looking at the true root cause of some of this stuff. And it's eye-opening when you do. That's in the third segment of today's show and in tomorrow's bonus show, the crossover episode as well. So make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join almost 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube. If we can do that by the end of the postseason, that would be an awesome number to hit and a big milestone and something that Pelicans fans should be proud of themselves when it comes to. And become an everydayer. It means you listen Monday through Friday. Comment down below and let me know if you are an everydayer. So we're going to look at two things with the defense. What OKC's defense is doing and how Brandon Ingram is playing right into their hands. And what the Pelicans defense is doing and how that's also playing right into the hands of the Oklahoma City Thunder, and two changes that can swing this series and open it back up and get the Pelicans back into this. So on defense, on offense, the Thunder defensively, love what the Pelicans are doing right now. Love everything that the Pelicans are doing because that's making their lives easier. They've held the Pelicans to 92 points in back-to-back games. It's a terrible number. Horrible number for the Pelicans. They averaged, I got to pull it up. Their offense wasn't amazing this season. And again, they're missing Zion Williamson, who at this point is not coming back in the first round, maybe the second round. They averaged 115 points per game. So 2 games at 92. It's a significant downgrade there. It's not going to get it done. Brandon Ingram's making it too easy. And this has to do with his play style. Maybe he's still a little bit injured from the knee, but look, you're playing. You've got to be better. It's really as simple as that. Same thing for CJ, right? You just have to be better. You're getting paid the big bucks. Otherwise, don't play. And by just relying on that mid-range shot, the Thunder are thrilled. That's a tough shot. That is a tough shot. And the Thunder are more than happy to let him have it. And he's not even making them at the rate that you want. Notice that it goes back to shot creation just of offense. Thunder aren't throwing 2 guys at Brandon Ingram. They're very happy to let Lou Dort play him one-on-one and then Brandon Ingram to just take a mid-range contested jumper. And he's not making them. He's not making them at all. And that's a big part of the problem. You can say that's his shot, and it is, but it's also not a good shot to take just in general. This is why we focus on shots at the rim, which have a higher shooting percentage. 3-pointers, which basically have the same percentage from these mid-range spots that Brandon Ingram takes, but has an extra point attached to it, making it thus a much better shot. It's sometimes really as simple as that. Brandon Ingram in this series right now is shooting 37% from the field. He's taken two 3-pointers, and that's it. 37% from the field. He shoots 35.5% from 3. At least if you're taking, that's a comparable percentage to 37%, right? It's 1.5% difference. One of them is worth an extra point. One of them is worth 50% more, a third more, right? Whatever you want to look at with it, than the shot you're taking. If they're the same shooting percentage, take the one that's worth more. That's why we hammer this point home about mid-rangers. But it doesn't put pressure on the defense. If Brandon Ingram was driving and attacking the basket, prepared for the Lou Dort defense, that would then maybe draw 2. That means you can then move the ball around and find a wide open 3-point look. One of the reasons why the Pelicans aren't shooting well in this series as a whole is because They can't get open 3-point looks because everyone is just on single coverage. One guy on Brandon Ingram, one guy on CJ, one person on Trey, one person on Herb, Chet Holmgren on whoever the center is, right? There's no ball movement to get off an open 3-point look. And that's why in this series, the Pelicans aren't taking very many of them. They've taken 65 through 2 games. We know that number needs to be higher. In one sense, I'm upset about it, yes. But the other sense, no, because there's not 3-point shots to take if no one will force this Oklahoma City Thunder defense to rotate. And when they're playing one-on-one, they're going to force you into turnovers because that's what they do. Everything about what the Pelicans are doing right now offensively is playing into the hands of the Oklahoma City Thunder, including those moving screens. And we're going to talk about that more in the next segment because I rewatched all of those. This is a lot on the Pelicans. Some of it's on the refs, but I'm going to say, and I know this is going to bother you, more of it's on the Pelicans, and I'll explain why in the next segment when it comes to those moving screens. You've got to stop playing into their strengths and into their hands. And that starts with Brandon Ingram actually being freaking aggressive or shooting threes. Make them, worried, and they're not right now. Part of it with those screens is Brandon Ingram is moving too quickly. When a screen is coming over for him, and this is not their normal style of ball that they play, but if a pick is being set, he's got to wait for that screen to be set before he makes his move to then use that. Because if that guy's not set, they're going to call a moving screen. Simple as that. Or you need to start rejecting that screen and go in the other direction and at least attacking off of the threat of that screen. But right now, that screen's probably not even worrying the Thunder given all of the offensive fouls that the Pelicans had, 8 in game 2. Something that the Thunder are really good at drawing, by the way. They were number 1 in the league in terms of drawing or forcing the opponent into offensive fouls. This should have been on the game plan. They should have been prepared, but that is a theme that they are not. More on that in the next segment. Defensively, let's switch it, right? We know what Brandon Ingram needs to do, what CJ McCollum needs to do. And by doing that, it'll get Trey and Herb and others more involved. The other thing you need to do is figure out a plan to defend Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. We'll talk more. I talked about this in the live post-game show. And I talked more about it in the crossover episode that you're going to get here on Locked On Pelicans tomorrow with Rylan Stiles of Locked On Thunder. They like to switch. They're switching too often, and it's giving Shai Gilgeous an advantageous matchup against CJ McCollum and others. And that's one of the reasons why he's being so effective. So they didn't switch in game 2. And then it led them to having wide open 3-point looks, right? Either way, you're kind of playing into the advantage of the Oklahoma City Thunder. It's time to trap, in the zone defense didn't work either. It's time to trap him. It's time to trap Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Throw 2 bodies at him. This is where a guy like Dyson Daniels can come into play, but you can also do this with others too, right? If Hawkins is out there, have him keep Herb on him. Josh Giddey comes and sets a screen because they're doing it primarily with other guards and wings. Josh Giddey comes and sets a screen. You've got Herb Jones on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jordan Hawkins on Josh Giddey. Have Herb fight through the screen, but also have Hawkins switch and put 2 on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Does that mean Josh Giddey's open? It does. I'd rather Josh Giddey score than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at this point. Limit the star players, force those role players to beat you, particularly when those role players are on the road where they don't play as well normally. Now, Josh Giddey does in the Smoothie King Center for whatever reason, but he's not having the most effective series right now. So you have an opportunity to really maybe take advantage of this. Josh Giddey is shooting 33%, 20% from 3. Make him beat you in game 3. If he does, whatever. It's process over results, and that's a better game plan than what the Pelicans have come up with so far. But everything they're doing, with what they're doing offensively, with what they're doing defensively, is just giving an advantage to the Thunder, and it's time to stop doing that. Part of this is a lack of preparation. The lack of preparation from this team, whether that's on the coaching staff, the players, the front office, or all of the above, is frankly shocking to me. Not being prepared for the refs, not being prepared for adjustments that you need to make is straight up shocking at how bad this team has looked. The Thunder are a better team, particularly with no Zion Williamson for the Pelicans. The Pelicans should not have looked this bad in game 2 at all. At all. They're a better team than this. They need to start acting like it. One of the things is preparation, and that is preparation with the referees, with the physicality of this series too. There's some damning quotes here that I need you to make sense for me, and I'll tell you what those are. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Right now, though, today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. You're a small business. You can't afford to have those positions open. It taxes other people on your team. It might impact your profits. You don't want that. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70%, get this, of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're in the wrong place. And on LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is also finding new ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process quick and easier. And that's why 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want. Look, I think this show is a banger today. I'm going to be honest. This is a little behind the scenes stuff. Sometimes I know when I record a good show and I'm like, oh, that was well thought out. The stuff in there is really good, really useful for you as a Pelicans fan. I hope the show does well today. But you don't get this type of insight anywhere else. A lot of the X's and O's break down the general bigger picture around the team as well, and not just kind of complaining. And so please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join almost 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. We've got a great crossover show for you tomorrow on Locked On Pelicans as well, getting the Thunder perspective. How are they feeling about things? What are they worried about? Are there adjustments that people who cover the Thunder think the Pelicans should make to get back into this series? It's got some really great insight for you. You don't want to miss this one to get you set for the game at 2:30 on Saturday. Also, half-price concessions before the game from 12:30 to 2:30. Get in the Smoothie King Center, make some noise. Eat well, drink well. It's going to be a lot of fun. Look, playoff basketball, no matter what, is fun, and I'm excited to be there. I will have the Locked On Pelicans stickers with me. If you see me in the arena, I'll probably be hanging out around with the Pels 12 around one of the bars there before the game. Come say hi, come chat with me. Happy to talk with y'all. And now for your second listen. Saints draft. Locked On Saints, Ross Jackson. Go check it out. Make sense of what the Saints are doing. How can they improve next year? How did the first round go? Is it what they wanted? Is it not? What are they going to do the next couple days? Michael Pratt, maybe, as a late round pick would be cool too. Okay. We just went over CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, the defense here. Just changes the Pelicans have to make to get back into this series. One of the things, though, that has really jumped out at me is the lack of preparation by this team. They seem woefully unprepared, unaware with what was going to happen here. And I don't get it, to be perfectly honest. You know, after game one, with the physicality that Lou Dort had, maybe you don't know what to expect going into game one with the refs and the physicality. That's fine. You saw Brandon Ingram be like, you know, let him bring that physicality. I'll be ready. Guess what? He wasn't ready in game two. After they played such a physical game one, and then did it again in game two, this team looked unprepared for it. And Jonas Valanciunas, and this quote is mind-blowing to me, to be perfectly honest, said after game two, you know, they were more physical and we weren't expecting that. Make it make sense. And this isn't a knock on Jonas or anyone in particular. This is just a team-wide thing. You weren't expecting it to be that physical after game one was that physical? I don't understand that. Why weren't you expecting it to be that physical after game one was that physical? The Thunder have been a physical team all year long. How are you not prepared for that in the slightest? I really don't understand that. You know, I know you come to this show looking for answers, but this is one that, you know, is going to merit a deeper dive in the offseason. Is this on the coaching staff? Is it on the players? Is it on the front office? Is it a little bit all of the above? And I think it probably is. You weren't ready for their physicality? They have been number one all year in terms of drawing opponents into offensive fouls. So be ready for that. Be ready for that, right? Tell your team when you set screens, it needs to be really good. I rewatched all of those 8 offensive fouls. Some of them are iffy. I will admit that here. But a lot of them, yeah, those are illegal screens. And when we talked about it in the last segment of Brandon Ingram going before that screen is set, yeah, he might get set by the end of it, but if the contact occurs before he's set, because Brandon Ingram's already making his move, that's not how you do this. That's on the coaching staff and the players to just know what to do, and they're not. That's not the refs being blind or whatever. That's the Pelicans being unprepared for how this Thunder team plays defense by blowing up screens. We'll talk more about this in tomorrow's episode of Locked On Pelicans with Rylan Stiles of Locked On Thunder. Make sure you watch that one. It's a great episode. But it's not just that the refs are unfair or anything like that. This is more to me on the Pelicans. But here's the other thing. Okay. There's definitely been some flops from OKC and things like that in this series, and the Pelicans aren't doing the same thing. You know, if the refs are awarding that and rewarding that, then you should do the same thing. Why aren't you flopping a little bit? Why aren't you selling those contacts and calls, right? I don't care about playing the game the right way. I care about winning. That's what you're trying to do, right? It reminds me of the scene from Glenn Ross when Alec Baldwin walks in, right? And it's like, oh, you're a good dad? Go home and play with your kids because that's not why we're here, right? He doesn't say it exactly like that. You know, that's great. You can say we played the game the right way and lose in 4 and enjoy Cancun. I don't want that. If you got to flop to get calls, flop to get calls. This is part of the preparation, though. Willie Green should be instructing them to do that. Sell the contact. Or set better screens. Don't commit offensive fouls. Don't pop your hip out like they've done. That is how things are happening right now. Have your guys better prepared, but for Jonas Valanciunas to come in and say like, oh, we weren't ready for the physicality. We didn't expect that. And what I thought they were going to be physical. Let me ask you this rhetorical question, but you can comment down below. Did you think Lou Dort was going to play the same style of defense on Brandon Ingram? I did, from game 1 to game 2. I did. Did the Pelicans not think that? Did the Pelicans not think that at all? Because why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't you be better prepared for this team? You know, I don't think they're going to make a change at coach. I don't even necessarily think they should make a change at coach. But this is the type of thing that makes me question Willie Green more than I probably have before. And this is, in my opinion, I think a pretty negative thing for your team to come out and have said that and for you to look woefully unprepared for a first round series. That's not an ideal situation to be in whatsoever. And they are. And it's part of why you're 0-2. Now, we can be optimistic about this. It doesn't have to be super negative here on Locked On Pelicans, and I don't want to be. Right? Look, Thunder won at home. That's what they're supposed to do. Now it's the Pelicans' turn to hold serve as well and extend this series, right? There's the cliche. Series doesn't start till someone, wins an away game. Now we get our first true test about that here, right? Thunder did what they were supposed to do, what everyone expects, win at home. Now it's on the Pelicans to do the same. They haven't been great at home, but maybe just they've looked out of sorts, not ready for the moment. Maybe just being in their own beds, maybe, whatever it is. Maybe it's the crowd, right? Things like that. Maybe that just gives them a little bit of a boost. They've been shooting very poorly this series. They tend to shoot a little bit better on the road, but it's comparable to their home number 2. Maybe you'll see a breakout in terms of 3-point shooting because they could use it. So hopefully they're going to be able to do this and pull it off and extend this series, because the worst thing you want is a sweep and you don't want to go out on your home court, at least in 4 games. 6 games is a different story. 4 games, certainly not, and that looks bad here, and the Pelicans have a chance to play with some pride, to make the fans happy here. I don't think anyone's expecting the Pelicans to win this series anymore, but you at least want to play with some pride and put forth a good effort for your fans here and make them feel proud of you for the fight. That's what I want to see in this game, along with all of the adjustments that I just said. What are the other adjustments you want to see the Pelicans make going into Game 3? Let me know in the comments down below. And that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans, but not this week of Locked On Pelicans. Crossover episode with Locked On Thunder host Rylan Stiles tomorrow. It's going to be a great one. You don't want to miss it. We'll get you set for Game 3. I'll see you in the Smoothie King Center on Saturday. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at Nola Jake on Twitter. This is the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Pelicans. This is the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.